right, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone so much for joining us today and welcome to the session. Hope you're each having a great day. My name is Colleen Berry. I'm the Marketing Director at Burwood Group and I'll be your host for today's session. So let's jump right into the topic. Our topic today is on emergency notifications, keeping people safe at the right place, right time throughout the entire healthcare environment. Burwood is thrilled to partner with SingleWire and Aspirus Healthcare on today's session. So a little bit about us. Burwood is an IT consulting and integration firm headquartered in Chicago with offices and employees across the U.S. We help hospitals and healthcare systems leverage technology to improve organizational and clinical outcomes. And with SingleWire, an industry-leading communication software provider, we're thrilled today to highlight the real-life client perspective on improving notifications in the healthcare environment through a conversation with Aspirus. So a little bit of housekeeping before we jump in. We've allocated 1 hour for today's session, and we are recording. So a recorded version of this webinar will be available and sent to all of you following. And if you have any questions throughout, we welcome you jumping in with those. Please use the chat or Q&A window on the right side of your WebEx browser, and we'll get to as many as we can. We would love for this to be as collaborative and interactive as possible. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet our presenters. I'd like to introduce you to our SingleWire, Aspirus, and Burwood speakers today. We have Pat Shekel, Executive VP of Product Management and Marketing at SingleWire, Chris Fallon, Director of IT Services at Aspirus Healthcare, and Brian Buck from our Burwood team, Collaboration Practice Director. As for the agenda today, as I mentioned, our focus is really going to be on an interview with Chris. We can't wait for y'all to hear his story relative to Burwood and SingleWire and notifications in their environment. But before we jump into that interview, we're going to get started with just a little bit of background on Burwood, SingleWire, and the Informacast technology. So let's go ahead and jump right in, starting with Burwood. Brian Buck from the Burwood team. Brian, please take it away.
Thank you, Colleen. And I just want to take a couple minutes. Obviously, the headline today is hearing from SingleWire and Aspirus, but I want to give a little bit of a view on why we think we're unique and how the collaboration practice at Burwood may be different than others. At Burwood, we really take a holistic approach to an organization's collaboration needs. And so our experts work with our clients to design and implement a wide range of capabilities, starting with unified communications, which includes end-user voice and video and chat applications, as well as physical telephony and other communications devices, which we may hear some about today. Various team-oriented collaboration applications follow this as well, with solutions such as Microsoft Teams and WebEx Teams and Slack, among many others that are becoming a key part of many organizations' daily workflow. We also have expertise in custom video conference room designs and installation, and of course, making sure that these room systems are able to interact with the online meeting platforms that may be in use within our clients. And then from a customer-facing perspective, we have a contact center team that is focused on ensuring our clients are able to provide their customers with convenient and efficient ways to get in touch, such as text messaging, requesting a callback. And then we also look to simplify the customer service representative's job as well by providing them with automation and easy to access information to serve their customers. So we provide our clients with collaboration solutions that are built to satisfy all of their business requirements. And this many times means finding the right components and features for the task, which over the course of time has resulted in some key partnerships that we've established to be able to bring these unique use cases to life. SingleWire is one of those partners, one that we've been working for many years, in fact. Their offering set extends the reach of an organization's communications boundaries, and it provides automation that can literally save lives. It's always exciting for me to hear and participate in creative ways that technology capabilities have been adapted to accommodate various use cases. And I hope what you hear today excites you or inspires you as well. If you have questions following this call, the Burwood team is standing by to assist. Thank you, and I'll pass it on to Pat.
Thanks, Brian. So this is Pat Shekel with SingleWire Software. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on who we are as a company, our product, our platform, Informacast, and then I'll be talking to Chris from Aspirus and really walking through his experience, because I think that's probably the highlight of our afternoon here, so, or the end of the morning, depending on where you're coming in from. So first of all, just a little bit of background on SingleWire. We're based in Madison, Wisconsin. We have about 110 employees. We built Informacast nearly 20 years ago, really coming out of 9/11. There was a Homeland Security mandate that said that all federal buildings need to be evacuated within 15 minutes of an emergency. And the Department of Commerce really had no way of complying with that mandate. So they turned to us, and we built an application that would send text and audio broadcasts to all 4,200 of their Cisco handsets at once. That's where we started. We've added a lot since then, and you'll see that as we go forward. So what is Informacast? It's essentially a platform that sends text, audio, and image broadcasts to those devices that support it. Not every endpoint can do all of those, but the big thing is really streaming audio and notifications that get out very quickly. So it's really used for a variety of use cases, but it's often used for emergency notification because speed and reach and urgency are at a premium in those situations, and that's what the platform was designed for. But you'll hear today from Chris at Aspirus about lots of workflow type applications as well, use cases that are really just about productivity in the day-to-day use of Informacast at their hospital system. So we're going to give you an opportunity to participate. We're going to give a really quick demonstration, not a full demonstration of Informacast, given the time here, but we encourage you to pull out your cell phone right now and text #alert to the phone number you see on the screen there. And this is going to be a little bit of an interactive demonstration. You'll be sent a question, and you'll be able to confirm a response. And so you'll get to see the application working, at least the mobile piece of it working. For a full demo, that's your homework, is to follow up with Burwood and schedule a full demonstration of Informacast so you can see everything that we can do. But for right now, go ahead and pull out that phone and text #alert to that phone number there on the screen. We'll give you just another moment to do that. And we're not keeping your phone number in any way. Just want to assure you, if you're hesitant to do this, it's going to get blown away when we're done. It actually automatically flushes out at the end of the day, the way that we have this campaign set up. So I'm going to go ahead and move along now. Hopefully we have some people participating. And we'll pop over to the Informacast console in just a minute. Before we get there, we're just going to talk about what really matters in an emergency and really what our system was designed to do, and that's to send out very effective notifications, not just check the box that you have a notification system, but make sure that those notifications reach who they're supposed to. So getting them out fast, reaching as close to 100% of your desired population, and then ultimately adding a sense of urgency to those notifications. Because the reason you're sending a notification in the first place is to try to get people to take a certain behavior. That could be coming to work. It could be staying away from a building. It could be evacuating a building. It could be any number of things. And we'll show some of the use cases here in a moment. But ultimately, you want people to take action, and including multiple methods of reaching people and including streaming audio and spoken voice is a proven way of doing that. So we'll talk about reach here briefly, and what you see here is really half of what we call our any to any diagram. And it really just shows here the things that can receive a notification from Informacast. So you see here we have a lot of on-premises devices. That's really where we started, sending to IP phones. We added in IP speakers. We hold a patent on a protocol that goes inside of the speakers that are built by 10 different manufacturers, so that they register directly with Informacast. We can send to them individually or as a group. We can control the volume, and we can scroll text across. Many of them have integrated either LED or LCD screens that allow us to send text, which is particularly helpful in a noisy environment, or when you want to add ADA compliance. So you see a whole range of things, and really the idea here behind this ecosystem is we're trying to reuse what our customers have already invested in. So if they have digital signage, if they have an existing overhead paging system, we are not going to tell them to rip and replace that and put in IP speakers. IP speakers will augment what they've done. And then moving on, beyond the on-premises capabilities, we're looking at the mobile notifications, and that's really what we're going to demonstrate here in a moment. And that's really what most mass notification systems are all about. They're all about the mobile piece. Know that we do that, of course, but we do the on-premises piece, and we tie into all the collaboration systems, or many of the most used collaboration systems out there. And that's particularly helpful for reaching people, especially today when many of us knowledge workers are working all day, every day inside of applications like Microsoft Teams and Cisco WebEx Teams. But it's also very helpful for managing the ongoing scenario. So when you send out a notification, that's often not the end of a scenario. That's typically somewhere along the beginning. If you take like a severe weather event or an active shooter event or a hazardous materials event, you're sending out a notification, and then you're following up with it. And your safety team or your incident response team needs a place to meet. And what we are stressing is why not have them meet in the place where they're spending all day, every day, the tool that they're familiar with. During a time of high stress, like an emergency, sending them to a specialized tool can be fraught with danger because they'll be trying to learn the tool or fumble through it, as opposed to responding to the incident inside the tool they use all day, every day. And this is where Burwood can really help too, because this is where they have a deep level of expertise in these collaboration tools. So adding that as another layer of notification is important for those reasons. In terms of what we can send from, this is where the speed angle comes in. And the reason I say that is because it's very easy to send. One, you can hit a button on a desk phone. You can send from a mobile app. You can send from the web console and command center and so forth. So those are very fast ways of manually triggering a notification. But what really comes in are some of the automated methods of triggering a notification, tying directly into the National Weather Service, tying into video surveillance systems, gunshot detection systems. For our friends in the 3 West Coast states, we have a partnership with Early Warning Labs, which is using the USGS sensors in the ground, and we can give you up to 60 seconds of advanced warning before an earthquake hits. So we're not going to go real deep into each of these, but know that if you're really looking at upping the speed of the notifications, then removing a human element for certain use cases can be very helpful. When you look at the typical use cases, you see some of them listed here, and I'm not going to go through each of these. Again, the content is whatever you want it to be. When we provision a system for a new customer, we do have a message pack that is based on the industry that the customer is in. So there's a healthcare pack, and there's a manufacturing pack, and so forth. And those message templates are tailored for that industry. But you can create as many as you would like. You can name them whatever you would like, and the text, the audio, the image can be whatever you would like. And so we see people getting very creative with this, solving all sorts of use cases that we had never really dreamed of. We did come out with a COVID-19 message pack earlier this year that any customer can add into their system, and that was based on messages that we had seen our customers sending to their end users. So we looked in the database, and we looked for coronavirus, and we looked for COVID-19, and we pulled those messages out, and we took what we thought were the best examples, and we put those into a message pack that any of our customers can load into their system, just as an example. So looking at some of the clinical use cases in a healthcare environment, because Chris is with Aspirus, which is a large healthcare system in central Wisconsin, and we're going to be talking to Chris here momentarily. Some of the clinical use cases we see are calling codes. Obviously it's something where speed is essential, and reaching the right people is essential. So in this case, it's really a group-based notification, not necessarily one that you would send to everybody in the organization, but to people in a particular work group. And those codes, of course, are code blue, red, silver, yellow, or some healthcare systems are using plain language codes. But regardless, very, very easy to put those in and to give the ability to the right people to be able to trigger those. Mass casualties events where you're trying to reach not just people that are currently working at the hospital, but also caregivers that may need to come in for that particular event, casting a wider net in terms of workforce notification for that example. AED boxes are a good example of the IoT integration that's built into Informacast, in the sense that if someone opens one of those defibrillator cabinets on the wall, they're probably trying to help someone who's having a cardiac event, and the safety security team is likely going to want to know about that. So we connect that defibrillator cabinet into a contact closure device, which connects to the network. and then triggers into Informacast, so the safety team can be notified immediately when that box is open. And then you see a number of other things here. For those who work in healthcare, they're probably all too familiar with violence against caregivers, fueled largely by the opioid crisis, but other things as well. And so giving caregivers the ability to send out a panic button type alert, whether that's, again, triggering from a desk phone, a mobile phone, even like a wireless lanyard. There are different systems that have inbound integrations to Informacast to trigger that. And then patient tracking is kind of a unique one as well. The idea here is that for wander risk patients, typically those with dementia, if they are leaving a particular area, they need to be turned around. And so the old school way of doing this is putting a bracelet on them, an RFID bracelet on the patient. And when they cross the threshold, an alarm sounds. Medical assistant then has to run after them and turn them around. Fairly labor intensive and also very confusing to a wander risk patient. So the way that we're doing this now is when that person crosses the threshold, instead of sounding an alarm tone, we play the recorded voice of the loved one of the patient, telling them to turn around and go back to their room. So, hey, Uncle Todd, everything's okay. Turn around, go back to your room. And what's really interesting about this is we've done this at a number of hospitals, and the success rate is very high. It really works to turn the patient around, one, and two, it's far kinder. I mean, the patient is happier as a result. And then the other thing that we're seeing is that, of course, the next question we often get asked is, well, what happens if they don't turn around? Well, then you have a secondary threshold. And if they cross that, then someone will chase after them because we don't want Uncle Todd wandering the streets. Okay, so a few more use cases here just in terms of operational use cases. We have targeted paging, what is often referred to as quiet initiatives. So getting very granular with the paging so that only those that need to hear it, and we're not disrupting patients, particularly during certain hours. Scheduled broadcasts for visitors' hours or chapel services, different things like that. So these are recurring broadcasts. We have a very powerful scheduler built into the system. There are over 1,000 school districts in the U.S. that use our system, and they're using it for many of the emergency notification use cases, but they're also using it for their passing bells, and there's a bell scheduler built in there. Operating room turnover, refrigeration alerting, maybe not terribly obvious to those who are outside of healthcare, but there are things like spinal implants that are worth thousands of dollars and that are kept refrigerated. And if that unit were to fail, they don't have that long to get them into another unit. And so tying that system into Informacast, another Internet of Things example, where that can save a lot of dollars. And then you see a number of others here just in terms of signing up, really like you just did, hopefully, by texting a hashtag into a phone number for visitor notifications. So we call that a campaign. You register for just usually for the day so that if you are on site and the organization wants to notify you about something, you're now in the system for that day. So what I'd like to do now is just jump over. I'm going to send out a broadcast. You're looking at the Informacast system here, and so you're seeing the console of Informacast Fusion, which is our platform that brings together both the on-premises and the mobile devices. And these tiles across the center here, with what we call scenarios, are part of a feature called Command Center. And the idea behind Command Center is really just to make sending very easy for anyone in the organization. And so based on your role, you'll get a different set of scenarios. This is just set up on my demo system, and I'm going to trigger my favorite scenario, which is a hazardous materials incident. So when this is triggered, I get 2 questions. I could have more questions. These are completely customizable, but for the demo, I'm just going to go ahead and choose. We're going to say sulfur dioxide, and we're going to say that is happening at the South Campus. I get a chance to review that. and now I'm reviewing the scenario. I can see the different notifications. Now, a key thing that I'm showing here is that, I'll go back up for a second. I'm sending one notification to my safety team. I'm sending a separate one to all staff. So that scenario can essentially fork the notifications and send two different notifications from one scenario. I could send more than that if I wanted to. And you can see here, I have a chance to review it. It's all set up the way that I would like, so I'm not going to change anything. But you can see there's a subject, a body, there's audio that's in here, which you won't hear because you're only going to get an SMS for this particular scenario. But if you had the app, or if we show you the on-site notifications, you would hear that. So I'm going to go ahead and click send. That's going to go up into the cloud, and it's going to come back down. And now I can go ahead and I can click onto this, and I can see responses come in real time. And you can see how fast it went out there. And I received it as well, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to respond on my phone. So we have a response come in. So if you receive this text message, I encourage you to go ahead and respond, and it'll ask you for, text back one for the one notification, two for the other. Actually, this is the safety team notification, so I'm going to go back and go into the one that went to everybody. There we go. And now we're seeing that pie chart move. And if people respond here, we'll see it update in real time. We can see 4 people are safe, 2 say send help immediately. We have no responses from a number of people. But as they respond, we'll get more. And we did send out, you can see here, I was looking at the one that was sent to our safety response team earlier. Now we're looking at the one that was sent to all of you. And you can see we have a number that went out, 9 that went out via SMS. And you can see how the other channels stack up. So hopefully you find that somewhat interesting. And just a very quick demonstration of just the mobile capabilities. We can have you on a demo over video, and we can talk about your particular use cases, and we can show you how we can light up all the other devices, IP phones, desktops, IP speakers, digital signage, etc. So that's just a teaser demo to show you a bit of functionality of what we can do. So we're just about to the point we're going to bring in Chris and talk about his particular experience with Burwood and with SingleWire and Informacast. But know that the pandemic has changed a lot of things, and the mass notification industry is no different. One of the things that we see are a lot of different types of messages being sent. A lot of health advisories, so masking policies, asking people if they're healthy or not. We see that happening at scale. So at manufacturing plants, there was a large beverage bottler, for example, that needed to speed up the time that it took to get people into the building. So they were pre-screening people and giving them a code based on how they responded. And if they got the fast pass code, they go in one line. If they didn't, they would go into another line, and so on. We also saw a big healthcare system in the desert Southwest that was sending out a health check to all of their caregivers before every shift. And you say, well, wouldn't they already know to do that, like not to come to work if they were sick? But you think about the way a lot of us have worked traditionally for decades even. If you're a little bit sick, you would take maybe Tylenol and just show up for work. And now they're saying, don't do that. Make sure that you're 100% healthy because you could be carrying the virus. So just a couple of examples of how things have changed. But we know that conditions change rapidly. We have a lot of places that are sending out notifications saying we've had a positive test at a particular site. Don't come in today. We're doing a deep clean. And those of you who were here yesterday need to get tested. And then we're going to look at a reopening date. So we're seeing all sorts of different things and you don't know when that's going to happen, right? You don't know when you're going to hear from one of your employees that a positive test happened. So email is not sufficient. It's one mechanism, but by itself, it's entirely insufficient. So hitting the people up on those other communication channels is very important. So having a reliable system that sends to many different communication methods is really important. And then having a way to, as we saw, get those responses back as we give you a very quick demonstration there and see that dashboard, but also having the ability then to bring together your incident response team. And that can be in a tool like Cisco WebEx Teams or Microsoft Teams, or if you want to go old school, we can have the cloud system dial people and just bring them onto a conference bridge and have that happen automatically, and it can dial people on up to 3 numbers each. So a number of different options there in terms of getting people together to deal with the ongoing scenario, because most scenarios are not just one and done, it's an ongoing management process. So a little bit of background there in the first bit. Now we're going to turn it over to a conversation between myself and Chris. Chris, welcome to the discussion.
Hey, Pat. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. So, Chris, tell us just a little bit about yourself. I know there was a brief introduction at the start, but tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about Aspirus.
Sure. I'm Chris Fallon. I'm the Director of Technical Services for Aspirus. I've been in the healthcare IT arena for going on 20 years now, predominantly on the infrastructure side of the house with Cisco servers, data centers, and the desktop engineering world. Aspirus, we were Central Wisconsin, the Upper Peninsula of UP. We operate 7 critical access hospitals throughout those territories. 1 primary center in Wausau, and a recent acquisition of another critical access hospital in Portage, Wisconsin, totaling this up to 9 inpatient hospital locations, and we've got approximately 72 to 75 ambulatory clinics located throughout Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan.
Okay, great. So what initially led you to find Informacast at Aspirus?
I think the initial thing it hits you really quickly when we convert from your old analog voice systems to a voice over IP system, Cisco Call Manager. You suddenly have these IP-enabled phones that were once a twisted pair of copper into the wall phones. And what we saw was, and hospitals are typically, they're built and they're added on, they're added on, and they're added on. So you end up with generations of technology. And some of the technology that Informacast has absolutely allowed us to get rid of are things like, I'll date myself, Stentaphone, and all the old school overhead paging infrastructure. And I don't think everybody knows what's all behind that, but you start lifting up the ceiling tiles and you've got a cable plant that you need to maintain for these speakers, and you've got special numbers people need to dial. So you're maintaining a completely separate infrastructure just to be able to do overhead paging. And in healthcare, overhead paging, I know we all have to go to the hospital from time to time, but take note next time you're in there. If the hospital sounds like a bus station and there's all kinds of overhead paging and confusion, they probably don't have Informacast, and they're continuing to rely on these old school broadcast mechanisms that are just littered with points of failure. So I think the primary reason we went there, we had increased functionality with the move to a voice over IP system that gave us an opportunity to look at better ways to leverage the existing infrastructure instead of maintaining separate infrastructure for something that really wasn't meeting our needs.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I like the bus station noise analogy. I'll just say to the audience there, if you have a question for Chris or myself, but probably for Chris, go ahead and type that into the Q&A panel. We have moderators who will be looking at those questions and can interject. I, of course, have some more questions to ask Chris, but we'd love to hear from all of you. So what users were most impacted by the implementation? I have some use cases up on the screen here. Tell us a little bit about some of those users that were most impacted.
I think our operating, our surgery suites at Wausau really tells a good story. I think overall the biggest impact to our users was the ability to send messages in real time to their Cisco wireless phones. And our care teams are continuously carrying those Cisco phones. They need them to do their jobs. And the ability to zone. So I think the biggest constituents and users of it that we rely on very heavily is our inpatient nursing. I think our surgery center was probably one of the more interesting cases that we had for Informacast. There are events that happen in a surgical suites that they happen regardless of whether it's a C-section or an open heart, or there are just things that have to happen in a surgery suite, regardless of the patient and regardless of the procedure. The method prior to so there's routine events. We need surgical supplies. We need things brought up from clean areas. We may need the synthes that Pat mentioned earlier brought over. So there's a lot of routine things that they need to do. The old process was they got on a phone and they called the 5-digit extension, and they hoped somebody answered the phone while they waited for it to say, hey, we need XYZ Medline kit brought to the surgery suite. The case has gone a different route. So a lot of time playing telephone tag with people that really shouldn't be focused on getting a hold of someone on the phone. So we worked very closely with our surgical suite, and we finally found a use case for all those buttons on the side of a Cisco phone that if you haven't figured it out yet, it's tough to figure out what they're for. But we programmed every one of those buttons in our surgical suites to do that routine stuff. Clean laundry in the elevator. That's a great use case. We've got a video out there on it. Surgical supplies needed, patient ready to exit. So we basically programmed all the surgical suite phones. So now instead of that OR nurse or MA attending to and waiting for a physical contact, what they can do is they just walk up to the phone in the OR suite. They press the button for the function that they need, and in a very pleasant voice throughout the entire OR suite, that message gets communicated through the IP speakers. So there's no need to wait on the phone. There's none of that telephone tag anymore, and we're able to automate and basically give our surgical suites one button to communicate throughout the entire through all the people that need to service them. So I think that's the biggest win that we've gotten, and keeping surgeons happy and surgical folks happy is really core to keeping our patients happy. So that's probably one of the more positive impact stories I can share.
That's a good one. So it sounds like is a 1-2 punch of both productivity and of caregiver clinician happiness, which is to put both of those together is always a good thing, because oftentimes you think of productivity as turning the screws a bit, but here we're automating things and we're making things more pleasant for people. So it's hard to argue with those results. That's a great story. Tell us a little bit about the dirty laundry delivery. What is it all about?
So in hospital settings, somewhere in the facility, there's going to be an area that's called the clean room. So all of the supplies come in through the normal channels, FedEx, UPS, et cetera, Medline, and they'll come into a sterile surgical processing area. And that's where all that stuff is kept. It's where it's stored. And then based on the case, that inventory is pulled and it's assembled into a kit. When that kit is assembled for an appendectomy or the dirty laundry, that will go up in the elevator. And again, in the old days, it was if the elevator is up, the people downstairs couldn't put anything into it, so they had to call up to the surgical suite, get a hold of someone, and say, hey, can you send the elevator down? And that was happening all day long until one of my engineers saw it and thought, why don't we use Informacast and there's another one-touch button, elevator up, elevator down, and now without calling anybody, without disrupting anybody, when you send the supplies up, you press the button, and throughout the surgical center, they know where the laundry is. So if we're sending laundry down, the elevator's never in a spot where they have to wait for someone anymore because of Informacast alerting people to the status of the elevator. And it sounds small, but think of the amount of surgeries you do every day and the amount of things that are going up and down that elevator. The Informacast, again, gave us if you watch the video on single wire, they put the materials in the elevator, they close the door, and it's a dumbwaiter type elevator. And then there's a phone right there, a Cisco phone. They press the button, and everybody who needs to know the status of that elevator is now informed. And nobody had to lift their hands up. They didn't have to look away. And when they go there with the dirty laundry and some of this stuff is biohazard, they know they're not going to have to wait and call somebody to send the elevator back up and down. So another very simple use case that offers just a ton of productivity and something as simple as not mass notification, but instantly notifying the people who need to know.
Yeah, it's a really unique one. I got to admit, I had not seen this particular use case, but our customers are always surprising us with their own use cases. Like I say, a lot of times people come to us for emergency notifications, but once they have the system in place, then the wheels start turning and they think about ways that they could automate processes, better notify particular groups, and make their lives easier. So that is a good one. As Chris mentioned, we have a video case study on the website. So if you go to singlewire.com and just search for Aspirus, you'll get there. That's a really good one. All right. So, and of course, we're talking a little bit about triggering from Cisco phones. It is possible to trigger from many other different types of devices, and we showed one of those with the web console. We can trigger from many other different types of phone handsets as well now. We started out with Cisco, but we branched out far beyond that. And so I think that's important in case we just have any people listening out there who say, well, what about this? Can I talk to a different type of phone? And the answer is yes. So we talked about operating room turnover. We talked about dirty laundry delivery. And I think most people know what a code blue alert is, but what is a discrete code blue alert?
Again, Pat, kind of going back to that bus station analogy, and I think some of us who have been around for a while, you've been in a hospital, and you'll hear a code blue, and that's not something that you want to hear. It's a resuscitation event is going on, and in the old days, we didn't have any other way to get a hold of people, so we do an overhead page, code blue in room 232. Well, if your loved one's in room 232 and you're on the way up the elevator to see your loved one and you just heard that overhead page, that's not very discreet, and that can get you fairly concerned. And while it doesn't cross the lines of HIPAA and privacy, the discreetness is instead of broadcasting to the entire organization or the entire inpatient floor that there's a code in 232, we can be more discreet about it. And what we do is we use zones and we use targeting to say if you're on the code blue team, your phone will be activated when this code is called, and the room number is placed on the telephone instead of having it broadcast throughout the whole organization. And really what it does is it helps us continue to facilitate that, silence and healing. And it also helps us protect the loved ones who may not understand that a code blue happens a lot in the hospital, and it's nothing to panic about. But instead of having loved ones converging in the room because they heard the overhead page, we've now got the care team focused on converging in the room and not upsetting the loved ones. So the discreetness is really back to that bus station analogy. Instead of yelling through the hallways that there's a serious problem in this room, we target the people who need to know, and we also target the people that are the closest to be able to respond to those events.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. I think we can all empathize with having a loved one in the hospital and how information is communicated and what we would want to experience. You certainly wouldn't want to hear that there was a code blue in the room where your loved one was housed. So that's a really interesting one as well. So again, for everyone out there, go ahead and punch in any questions that you have for Chris. Just use the Q&A panel. Love to take your questions either for Chris or for myself or for the folks at Burwood on any of the things that we've talked about so far. We are nearing the end of our regularly scheduled programming, so we want to make sure that if you have questions that we hear from you and we can answer those for you. So, Chris, tell us a little bit about...
reinforce your comment on Cisco, and absolutely, for those of you thinking and looking at solutions like this isn't tied to just Cisco, and I think one of the things I've seen with it, well, one of the things I know I've seen with it is we've kind of coined it. If it has an IP address and it has a screen, we can get a message to it using Informacast. You know, it's not just Cisco. So our Four Winds Interactive digital signage, that's not Cisco, but we can still get messages to it. So that is one of the big values that we're seeing is it doesn't have to be a Cisco phone. If it's got a screen and an IP address, more than likely Burwood and Informacast can be able to get whatever messages you want across those screens and IP addresses. And it also transcends your internal network and your external network. So don't think it's a Cisco-only solution. Just reinforcing what you said, Pat.
Yeah, thanks for that. I wasn't aware you're using Four Winds, so that's a good one. And, you know, a lot of organizations, particularly in healthcare, have digital signage in hallways and so forth. And, you know, the idea that if you have a particular type of emergency, why would you not want to use that screen real estate? I think that's a great use case example. So we've talked a little bit about some of the use cases that you've enabled there at Aspirus. What's next for communication overall at Aspirus? What do you plan on doing maybe down the road with your overall communication environment and maybe with Informacast specifically?
Well, I think the immediate one is our acquisition of a new health system will be to deploy the Informacast solutions that we have standardized at all of our other inpatient areas. An acquisition and getting Informacast into that location is an immediate sort of operational lift. But I know the guys are excited about some new things coming out, Informacast Fusion and some different versions that enable the messages to go across the internet and the network in a much faster speed. I'd have to get one of my technical guys on here to have them tell you the merits of Fusion versus our existing version. I can just share that they're very excited about the Fusion. And I think, Pat, the challenge we run into is all of the use cases and prioritizing them. So we want to do code grays in our cube farms for weather alerting, and we want to do active shooter here, and there's so many use cases that I think our biggest challenge is prioritizing them and ranking them in the most, what are we going to get the most bang for our buck out of? So I think a platform upgrade we're looking at, and I think we're really starting to eat our own dog food in IT with Informacast. I take the email doesn't work to heart. We had prior do an Epic upgrade. We're an Epic system shop. Upgrades are going on, and we'd have these email strings that are going on forever and a day, and you really don't care. And if you have to find a device and VPN, find OWA, we've moved all of our upgrade communication over to Informacast. And then it's just a quick glance at your phone. You can see what's going on. And then the conference calling feature, our IT team and stakeholders have really appreciated that as I'm scrolling through the updates and everything is going well, if something doesn't go well, we can get an alert that I'm literally anywhere I've got a good cell connection. I'm one button tap on Informacast, and I'm now joined into a WebEx with all of my peers to discuss the issue. So that work-life balance thing, that we're all not strapped to a cube anymore, we've got more people working remotely. I think Informacast is really going to grow in that area for us to get the message out to the cube farm that is now in someone's living room and not in an office complex somewhere anymore. So I really see just expanding that mobile communications is going to be the next frontier for us.
Okay, great. Yeah, really interesting about where you've been and where you've taken it, where you plan to go next. So with that, again, if you have any questions nearing the end here, go ahead and use either the chat or the Q&A panel to shoot us those questions. And with that, I'll turn it back to Colleen.
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Chris, you mentioned struggling with prioritization of all the use cases, which I'm sure you are not the only healthcare facility out there struggling with that. Out of curiosity, as of recent, the past 6 months, the pandemic, has that affected the prioritization of anything? Have you bumped anything up to the top of the list? based on current events?
Yeah, well, we have, but nothing. Yeah, we're kind of reeling and coming out of the hangover of COVID. I think a lot of our focus right now is on telehealth, work from home, and we've got doctors now that don't need to be in brick and mortar facilities any longer to make to provide care. I think that's the what we're really focused on right now is our business model has changed from, do you really need to drive into the clinic anymore to get your prescription renewed, or can you just go ahead and put the Aspirus app on your phone and have a virtual visit with your physician? So again, it's more of that mobile and more of that what used to be applications that were reserved for in the corporate walls. We've now got to make those extensible to the corporate walls are now limited to the reach of the internet.
I'd like to just mention that we talked about a lot of different use cases, and oftentimes when we talk to customers after telling them about the different use cases, they can be a little bit overwhelmed, thinking, well, there's a lot there. I don't know if I have time to get to all of that. And one of the things that Burwood does really well is work to identify those use cases that are going to give you the most value and then prioritize those. And we always talk about picking the 3 or 4 most important use cases, focus on those, and we have discovery workbooks that walk you through that process. So for example, what is the issue? Who gets to send it? Who are they sending it to? What information goes? What text, audio, image goes? What is required after the fact? Are we going to have message confirmation on it? Do we want any sort of follow-up? Do we want an incident response team to be brought in? And what action do we want people to take? So that, and that's just a handful, but that gives you kind of the basic flow that we look at. And then from there, you can decide, well, what devices am I going to use to get the information out to reach the people? So it's always about reaching people, and the devices, and we show all those different icons on the any-to-any diagram, the devices are a means to an end. So if you have a mass notification event, something that's critical, you want to use every device at your disposal. As Chris mentioned, anything with an IP address and a screen, get a notification to it. If it's something more workflow oriented, like his operating room turnover, the dirty laundry, or the discrete code blue examples, then you're looking at something that's much more targeted. So it can be 3 people you're trying to reach, it can be 30,000. The devices you choose, the content you send is really up to what you're trying to achieve from a business perspective. But we always talk about walking before you run, choose those most important use cases, and then move on from there. And Burwood's professional services group is really top-notch at taking that sort of approach to it. We've worked with them for a very long time, and they have a lot of experience putting in Informacast at our joint customers.
Thank you, Pat. Really appreciate that. Brian, anything new to add there from the Burwood Services perspective?
No, I don't. I agree completely. We're here to help with this type of these types of integrations as well as others. We always strive to find creative solutions to complex problems for our clients.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, great. I don't see any further questions in the chat. So before we wrap up, Chris, anything we didn't ask you about today that you'd like to share about Aspirus or your journey so far?
I would just like to echo what Pat said. Not only have I had a long history with single wire and success in my career as a result of single wire, I can't give high enough kudos to the Burwood group. And we brought them in on a different engagement. It was with Vocera and nurse call integration. But I think the thing that stands out the most for me with Burwood is they're not pushing a product. They're pushing wanting to get you to know you and your business problems, and then how can they solve it. I've never known Burwood to lead with a line card. I've never felt that Burwood is incentivized to sell me Cisco. So if you're looking for a true partner, I can't speak highly enough of Burwood, because they've been a partner of mine, not only with Aspirus, but with other organizations I've worked in. And they truly do not lead with products, which is a surprise for a guy in a seat like mine. Normally, they're pushing you on a product, and then you will change your workflows to align with that product. Burwood doesn't apply that pressure. They will take a lot of time to get to know you and your problems, and then they'll go back to guys like Brian and say, hey, what's the best way you think we can solve this? So a lot of kudos and a lot of, I speak very highly of both Burwood and Informacast, single wire.
Thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate those kind words, and we love hearing that from our customers. And I can say to everyone on the call, we did not ask Chris to say that. So Chris, really, thank you. Appreciate it.
I didn't even get a free T-shirt, so that's how much they paid me for this.
Really, thank you very much. That's awesome to hear from a great client. All right, well, I think that about wraps it up for us today. So I just want to say thank you again to all of you on the line. We really appreciate you joining. Thank you, Pat, Brian, and Chris. Again, really appreciate your time today speaking about how you all handle notifications at Aspirus and giving your unique perspective. So to all of you joining, like I said, we recorded this session today. We'll send out the recording link to everyone who registered, as well as your Grubhub credit. You'll receive that Monday morning. So look for that from us then. Any questions, just reach out if you don't see that in your inbox. And then you see Pat and Brian's contact info here on the slide. Definitely encourage you to connect with them. We'd love to talk more about what you have going on in your specific organization. When you close out this webinar today, you will get a pop-up survey from Cisco WebEx Events platform. We would love to hear from you on future topic requests, if there's any feedback you have for our presenters today, and anything you'd like to see us do a related session on in the future. We love hosting these kind of collaborative events and would love to take any feedback you have. So with that, I will wrap this up. Thank you again so much for joining us. Thanks to our great presenters today, and hope everyone has a wonderful day. Talk to y'all soon. Bye-bye.